I confronted Mike about his drinking, got a job, set boundaries, yet he still dismisses my feelings. Will I ever be enough for him? Buckle up. This is a lengthy one. I apologize. I am a 26-year-old woman, and my boyfriend, who is 33, has been emotionally draining me after nearly 4 years together. Our relationship began very casually, but after close to a year, we became more serious. Both of us had just exited relationships that left us profoundly unhappy, and we found solace in each other's company during that time. To begin with, I perceive myself as a generally laid-back, empathetic, and emotional person. Following an extremely toxic relationship before meeting my current boyfriend, whom I will refer to as Mike, I had no desire other than to enjoy a relatively stress-free relationship. As long as we were both accountable and loyal to each other, I felt content. I did not see myself as controlling or nagging. I believed he could do as he pleased, provided it didn't harm anyone and remained respectful towards me. From our initial meeting, I observed that he was an excessive drinker. He would consume 18 packs of beer and often a couple of tall cans, or he would finish an entire bottle of whiskey by himself in one night. When intoxicated, he becomes annoyingly incoherent and unapproachable, exhibiting bizarre behavior such as urinating on the floor outside the bathroom. Although this incident occurred early in our relationship, I voiced my discontent with his actions but failed to set any boundaries. I rationalized his excessive drinking as a response to depression stemming from his previous relationship, and this resonated with me because I was also struggling with depression. Thus, I felt it inappropriate to dictate how he should cope. Let me clarify that he has never exhibited any violent tendencies when drinking, nor does he show visible anger or raise his voice, even in sober moments. As our relationship evolved, his drinking habits showed no signs of slowing. He abstained during the work week, but would often get completely intoxicated on weekends, primarily Fridays and Saturdays, and occasionally Sundays, even knowing he had to work the next day. This consumption was difficult to witness, especially as I was taking antidepressants and rarely drank myself. I felt his drunken state was foolish, and ultimately, it became a major turnoff for me. It reached a point where I would cut our evenings short whenever he started drinking, simply to avoid the situation. Another issue arose from the financial power imbalance that became evident nearly from the start of our relationship, which grew even more apparent after we moved in together. While my job as a receptionist allowed me to cover my expenses, it paid significantly less than his high income from machining. He had never had to give much thought to finances. I struggle with major depressive disorder, borderline personality disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. After experiencing trauma in my last relationship, and within my family, I was attempting to stabilize my life and manage my mental health. I often missed work due to my inability to get out of bed, depleting my paid time off and vacation days before eventually transitioning to short-term disability just to protect my job and supplement my lost income. I eventually ran out of short-term disability time and had to switch to long-term disability, which provided only a few days a month off for mental health episodes. With all of this in mind, Mike was willing to cover any bills I couldn't manage. Consequently, we split expenses roughly 30-70, with him assuming the larger share due to his income and our affordable rent. I consistently made it a point to express gratitude for his financial contributions while striving to simplify his life in return. I took care of all the cooking, cleaning, and laundry in our home, only requesting that he take out the trash. I genuinely enjoyed these household responsibilities, and it eased the burden on Mike, allowing me to feel as though I was contributing and doing my best, despite my limited financial involvement. However, every so often, Mike would bring our financial disparity into disagreements, claiming I never expressed gratitude. Over time, I felt he harbored a simmering resentment towards me, but when I brought this to his attention, he would backtrack, insisting he didn't mind paying more and apologizing. Yet, he continued to wield financial matters over me. This dynamic has created substantial tension between us over the years. Although it has started to balance out recently, I will elaborate further on that later. As time passed, I fell into a deep depression, constantly anxious about finances and our relationship. I eventually lost my job in May 2024 due to having exhausted all my available time off and disability support. Consequently, our financial situation worsened. I struggled to secure new employment, forcing Mike to cover nearly all of our expenses. While I continued to manage household chores, our conflicts over money escalated. Mike appeared to absorb the costs momentarily but then later used them against me, making me feel powerless and disrespected. I felt unable to voice my opinion, as he would often lament, "I pay for everything." The only issue I firmly addressed was his excessive drinking. During the week, when we were sober, we would argue about many matters, and the weekends would morph into a nightmare for me. His drunkenness would lead him to unleash any lurking resentment. Engaging in rational discussions when he was intoxicated proved nearly impossible, resulting in explosive arguments that left me feeling profoundly isolated. He would send outrageous requests for money via Venmo for various expenses, knowing I lacked the means to repay him. His behavior came across as spiteful while he was drunk, and the next morning, he would offer apologies and have no clear recollection of the previous night's events. It was left to me to recount the incidents, making it feel entirely one-sided. I was expected to forgive and move on, despite carrying the emotional toll of our conflicts while he was intoxicated. This cycle continued until I insisted he needed to drastically reduce his drinking, as I was tired of dreading weekends. He claimed he would cut back and acknowledged he was overindulging, yet whenever he consumed a few drinks, he would seek out more alcohol, essentially breaking his promise to reduce his intake. Time and time again, he would assure me he wouldn't drink more but would pressure me to relent. I dreaded going to bed before him because he would utilize that opportunity to procure more alcohol. Each breach of trust left me feeling betrayed. Despite my attempts to communicate how his actions of going behind my back hurt me deeply, he would respond with insincere apologies. By the next weekend, the cycle would repeat itself. He often voiced his disdain for being told what to do, insisting he would deliberately act contrary to any suggestions. I understood that one cannot dictate another's actions, but wouldn't it be reasonable to make exceptions for the sake of our relationship's harmony? In July 2024, he also lost his job due to absenteeism. His unhappiness with his workplace had led him to miss several days, culminating in his termination. To complicate matters, during this time, he discovered that his father had prostate cancer. After being fired, he withdrew his 401k and decided to visit his home state for about a week before returning to regain his footing. He assured me he would get himself together after his time away, and I supported his decision. In total, Mike withdrew approximately $25,000 from his 401k. At that moment, we both were unemployed. I was still struggling to find work, but signed up for food assistance to make myself useful beyond household tasks. Mike, however, continually postponed seeking employment, asserting he needed some time to relax before jumping into a new job. I didn't blame him initially, believing it was reasonable to grant him a month's break. However, his drinking habits escalated dramatically. What began as weekend indulgences transformed into several sessions throughout the week. By early October, he had nearly depleted his 401k due to his spending on alcohol and bills. He continued to avoid job hunting, relying solely on his 401k funds, all while recklessly spending despite being aware of our precarious financial situation. During my months of unemployment, I applied to at least 6 different jobs daily and accepted any interview offered, yet I was never hired. I contacted all local employment agencies but received no calls back. The stress and anxiety felt overwhelming because I had no income, leading to feelings of worthlessness and failure. Mike often exacerbated these emotions with remarks like, "I've been paying for everything for months, and you still haven't found a job." Given my acute awareness of my lack of contribution, these comments struck deeply and left me feeling worse about myself. I was doing everything within my power, yet it seemed insufficient. I felt entirely and utterly useless, and on top of that, I felt guilty for his financial squandering because part of it stemmed from my inability to cover my share of expenses. At this point, we faced severe financial difficulties, and arguments continued. His ongoing excessive drinking and failure to seek employment forced me to make a decisive ultimatum. If he did not curtail his drinking, especially during the week, when he urgently needed to search for a job, the relationship would end. I couldn't bear to watch him derail his life while I was emotionally drained from our constant arguments. We agreed that he would limit drinking to 2 days a week on the weekends and would not purchase more alcohol each night once he had his initial supply. Following this agreement, I began to approach things more objectively, determined to restore our relationship. I ultimately secured a position at Starbucks in November 2024 after reducing my job expectations. I was committed to fostering a better future for both myself and our relationship, but Mike seemed to work against these efforts. He frequently reneged on our drinking agreement, which felt like a betrayal after we had come to a resolution together. He sabotaged his own progress by smoking, claiming he wouldn't pass a drug test, causing delays in searching for a job. He would occasionally do delivery driving, but the earnings were minimal and only fueled his drinking habits. I wasn't earning nearly enough to cover our increased rent and bills on my own, which led him to request his parents' help for the first time in his life to get by for the month. He had never been adept at managing finances. Previously, he made enough to avoid worrying about bills, but now that every dollar mattered, he couldn't grasp budgeting. I attempted to guide him, but ultimately it was his money, and I couldn't dictate how he should handle it. After the new year, I reached my breaking point. We had yet another explosive argument while he was intoxicated, leaving me devastated. I sat him down and communicated that I was establishing clear boundaries moving forward, offering a fresh start if we could proceed together with a positive mindset. However, I stressed that if he failed to respect our agreement or cross the boundaries I had clearly laid out, the relationship would be over for good. I believe this finally resonated with him, as he acknowledged the need for change and accepted responsibility for his negative behavior. However, due to his history of breaking promises, I began to expect that he would do so again. I experienced constant anxiety, worried about what his next move would be and whether it would lead to the end of our relationship. I am actively working on this because I genuinely want to give him one last fair chance to improve. It is challenging for me to suppress my doubts, especially because I have felt disrespected enough to refuse to allow it to happen again. Yet, I also want to make our relationship work, granting him the necessary space to transform. Lately, it has felt like I am playing the role of his mother, reminding him of his daily responsibilities and ensuring he does not become complacent with the bills. I hardly want to take on that role. I genuinely wish for our relationship to heal. I am often frustrated by his habit of staying awake until 2 or 3 a.m. and sleeping until around 2 p.m. the following day. This behavior leaves him feeling like he lacks time to accomplish anything productive during the week, such as looking for jobs, since the business day effectively passes him by. Reflecting on this, I realize that this is primarily what I confront him about, as I feel he is positioning himself for failure, which is difficult for me to witness without speaking up. He resents my comments, often feeling micromanaged, and I understand his perspective. He has adhered to the new boundary I established regarding his drinking, allowing only 1 day on the weekend and a 12-pack plus 1 tall can at most. He often expresses a desire to drink the following day, but he resists the urge and sticks to our agreement. He will suggest switching which day he drinks depending on a sports event, and as long as he doesn't pressure me into letting him drink on another day that week, I'm agreeable to this. We also agreed to share expenses equally, and he has been sticking to that as well, committing to going out for delivery work to meet a weekly goal. This has alleviated a significant portion of the power imbalance, and overall, the situation has been notably better since I implemented these boundaries. However, another overarching issue involves our intimacy. I consider myself to be a naturally sensual person. When we first began dating, we were highly attracted to each other and couldn't keep our hands off one another. A few years back, I struggled with my weight, which profoundly impacted my confidence and self-esteem. Even though he would reassure me that I looked fine, he once expressed concern that all of his exes got fat, which triggered feelings of inadequacy. I took his comment personally and became convinced he found me unattractive. Despite his attempts to apologize and affirm my desirability, I had difficulty believing him, fearing he was merely trying to spare my feelings. Following this incident, our intimate moments greatly diminished. Personally, The combination of low confidence and our constant conflicts played a role in this decline. While I have since lost that weight and am nearly at my desired physique, my sex drive has plummeted. Objectively speaking, Mike is attractive, and I am quite drawn to him. However, the emotional connection we once shared has faded. I find myself questioning what is wrong with me. I thought that once I discontinued my antidepressants, began taking Adderall, and we improved our relationship dynamics, my desire would return. Yet now, I worry that our issues have left an indelible mark on my ability to be intimate with him. Lately, even kissing feels awkward and forced. I have offered other intimate gestures to maintain his satisfaction, but I yearn for more. I cannot help but wonder if all our challenges have irreparably impacted my feelings. Today, I decided to write this post because something has been bothering me that leads to disputes between Mike and me. He mentioned, "You don't think I'm funny anymore. You used to, but now you don't." I want to clarify that this is not true. He is genuinely amusing. However, with all the turmoil we have endured lately, it has been challenging to find humor. I responded, "Well, things have happened between us that make it difficult to laugh as I once did, but you still make me laugh." He dismissed my response and said, "Yeah, well, you always seem to have an issue with me, and I don't understand why." His statement triggered me. Am I the only one bearing the burden of our numerous conflicts? Why does he assume it is solely my fault? My reactions stem from his actions when he has wronged or overstepped boundaries, yet he perceives me as the problem. I withdrew from the conversation, and a few minutes later, he came back to inquire about my feelings. I responded, "Yes, there is something wrong," to which he said, "Of course there is," before walking away. I am at a loss regarding how to proceed. We seem unable to reach mutual understanding. Despite my attempts to offer us a fresh start, he views me through the lens of "she's always upset about something," as if I am simply seeking reasons to be displeased. This feels utterly unfair and inaccurate. I am yearning for peace in my life, hoping we can overcome these challenges and grow together. I am unsure when enough is enough, and if it is time for me to walk away. I am struggling to salvage this relationship, feeling at times as though I am putting in all the effort alone. I genuinely do not know what to do. Once again, I apologize for the length of this message. Providing context was essential. Thank you for reading. I welcome any insights or perspectives, but please refrain from being rude. In summary, I am struggling to reconcile with my boyfriend after experiencing past arguments and attempting to start anew. He fails to recognize any wrongdoing that would justify my emotional distress when I am clearly dealing with lingering emotional damage.